everyone. I'm Kirsten Davidson, your host and creator of my wellness podcast, Mind the Gaps, where we work on surrendering our typical ways of looking at life to step out of our comfort zone and into our growth zone. Welcome to the first episode of 2025, episode number 22, Love is a Verb. Today's episode is especially special because it's the first one of the new year, and because I recently launched my own psychotherapy practice in the same name as this podcast. It's called Mind the Gaps Psychotherapy, and you can find more details at mindthegaps.co. In my role as a psychotherapist, romantic relationships come up all the time, whether I'm working with individuals or couples. And romantic relationship concerns are one of my areas of expertise, so I thought what better way to kick off the year, especially around Valentine's Day, than to talk about romance. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into the 5 love languages as coined by American author and radio talk show host Gary Chapman. The 5 love languages, according to Gary, are quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, and receiving gifts. Whether you're single, dating, or in a relationship, we'll explore how all of these love languages apply to these different stages and phases of either relationship building or nurturing relationships that we already have. And above all else, we'll explore how authenticity is the glue that holds all of these love languages together. For all things Mind the Gaps, you can find me on Instagram at kirsten.davidson, in addition to my new website, mindthegaps.co. If you like what you hear today, taking a moment to rate and review the podcast episode is always greatly appreciated. We couldn't do this without your support, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. I wanted to kick off today's episode by talking about the varied definitions of the term love. Love manifests differently for everyone and also manifests differently within our bodies. So it changes our neurochemistry. It changes our physiology, how we feel in our body. It changes our mental state and our general mood. And I think what I love about it most is that it's mysterious. We try and hone in on one singular definition, but there just isn't one. So I thought I would share some of my favorite quotes describing what love is exactly. I'd have to say that my top favorite is by record producer Rick Rubin, and he says that love equals a kinetic draw beyond our rational comprehension. I'll say that again. Love equals a kinetic draw beyond our rational comprehension. I think I love this too because he's a record producer. He's not a neuroscientist. He's not a psychologist. He's an artist, and he actually used this definition of love to describe what it's like to create art. And I think a lot of us who've experienced love can relate to the fact that it's something you can't really put your finger on. It's beyond rational comprehension. Another brilliant definition: love is the choice to extend oneself to help another grow spiritually. This was said by Scott Peck, American psychiatrist and best-selling author, in his book, The Road Less Traveled. I think this one's really important because it talks about selflessness and the feeling of wanting to nurture for sake of nurturing in love. Not doing it for personal gain, but doing it to see your partner grow and to witness that beautiful transformation and to be part of that beautiful transformation. This next quote is from American author, academic, and researcher Brené Brown. She says that true love allows, honors, and appreciates, while attachment grasps, demands, needs, and aims to possess. I like how she distinguishes between attachment and true love. Attachment is often mistaken for true love. We'll get into that later, but for now we'll say that true love is not about grasping. It's about letting go. And in the letting go, the people that are meant for you, the people that want to love you, and the people that you want to love can flood right in. And this leads perfectly into my final favorite quote about love. And this is by Glennon Doyle, American author, in her book, Untamed. Glennon says that to be loved is to be held and free. To be both held and have the freedom to explore. This ties nicely into Brené's quote because she mentions how attachment grasps and demands and aims to possess. So that would be quite the opposite of being free in a relationship. It would be constrained, it would be controlled. And so I love how Glennon touches on true love means that you can count on your partner no matter what to hold you, whether that's physically or emotionally, and to know that they're giving you the space and the freedom to grow and to be yourself, which also leads back into Scott Peck's quote about love being the choice to extend yourself to help your partner grow spiritually. And to know that your partner's doing the same for you, that there's reciprocal freedom and reciprocal holding. And all of these definitions of love point to emotional safety. Emotional safety means to be held and free. Emotional safety means to be appreciated and to be allowed to be yourself. It means to be embraced as who you are right now and also encouraged to be better. And it also means to feel the feel-good hormones and feel-good feelings of being with your partner, of feeling that kinetic draw beyond our rational comprehension. So now that we've laid some foundation on what love is exactly, let's get into the 5 love languages. In January of 2024, a survey was conducted by Abacus Data to explore Canadians' preferred ways of receiving love. The survey sampled over 2,000 Canadian adults, and the results are pretty interesting. Of the 5 love languages, respondents at 48% preferred spending time with their partner, so quality time won out at 48%. This was followed by physical touch at 20%, words of affirmation at 14%, acts of service at 13%, and receiving gifts at 5%. It was also interesting to learn from this study that younger Canadians showed a slightly higher preference for receiving gifts compared to other age groups. There were some gender differences too. Men were more likely to prefer physical touch, while women preferred words of affirmation and acts of service. These findings align with other research, such as a survey done by Preply in 2024, which also identified quality time as the most preferred love language amongst Canadians. It's important to note, though, that recent academic research challenges the traditional concept of distinct love languages. What I mean by this is that research has no empirical support for the idea that individuals have a single primary love language or that matching love languages between partners leads to greater relationship satisfaction. They actually suggest that love should be viewed more like a quote-unquote balanced diet, where various expressions of affection contribute to a healthy relationship. I also like to look at love like a paint palette, mixing, creating, exploring, sampling from a bit of each color to figure out what works for you and how you work with someone else. This reminds me of a quote by Natasha Lunn from her book, Conversations on Love. She says, "Finding love is like mixing paint. Some mixes make terrible colors." And when it comes to love languages, having a balanced mix of all these different colors can create harmony, unity, and consistency rather than too much of one or not enough of the other. So as we walk through these love languages, I encourage you to have an open mind and an open heart, to be curious about how you relate to these languages, what feels right for you, what shows up most in your relationship or in your dating experiences, and maybe what would you like to see a little bit more of. Let's get creative with that paint palette. Have fun, be open, try new things, get rid of others, wash your brushes, start all over, get messy, clean up the edges, and above all else, do not limit yourself to one color, to one love language. I promise you, you're way more interesting than that. Let's start off with the most popular love language in Canada, quality time at 48%. Let's break this down. We know what time means. We know that you can go on a certain amount of trips with your partner and spend a certain amount of hours in the day with your partner. But what makes it quality? Well, quality time is about giving someone your undivided attention to foster connection and intimacy, whether that be emotional or physical. We need to have that time together to get there. There's different aspects of quality time that I want to touch on, and the first one is focused attention. This means being fully present without distractions like phones, TV, multitasking, being present to other conversations when you're spending time with your partner, really practicing mindfulness and focusing on them. Another part is having meaningful conversations. So this means engaging in deeper chats, more active communication, and more empathetic discussions. When I say deep chats, what I mean is How do you express to your partner the inner workings of your mind? Now, this could be talking about philosophical concepts like, do you believe in God and what do you think happens after we die? Or it could be explaining why you like the coffee you like and what it means to you, or why you like the music you like and what that means to you, and asking those questions of your partner. And in the relationship building phase, the dating phase, this quality time is especially important. Having meaningful conversations and really getting to know who you're dating, who you're going out with, and having them have a better understanding of who you are. Especially when it comes to the big stuff in the dating phase, figuring out what's your partner's intention for dating. When you're on a date with this person, do you know why they're sitting there? Are they looking for something casual or something a little bit more serious? Do they want kids? Do you want kids? What are their thoughts on marriage? What are their thoughts on owning a home? What kind of job do they have? What are their aspirations? Do they have aspirations? All these big questions that sometimes don't get found out till much later, but really having the courage and having the fearlessness of approaching the bigger questions right off the bat can be really rewarding, because it's better to find out who someone is from the start than to project who you'd like them to be and then hope for the best. Another facet of quality time is doing shared activities. So, finding things that you and your partner can do together that are mutually enjoyable. This could be cooking, going on walks, shared hobbies, going out sometimes, sharing music with each other, figuring out what are the things that you and your partner connect on and that you can schedule. The scheduling part is really important in both the dating and the relationship phase, because then both you and your partner and or dating partner know that there is going to be time to have these meaningful conversations and to demonstrate your focused attention and to enjoy these shared activities together. I was talking with a friend just today, and she was sharing how a friend of hers recently got into a relationship, and right off the bat, they stopped going on dates. They just kind of sat around at home in their pajamas watching TV and ordering Uber Eats. And as much as that can be quality time in moderation, if there's no shared activity happening beyond watching TV, if there aren't any meaningful conversations, if there isn't that focused attention beyond on external stimuli, then we definitely want to question whether that time with the partner is quality. I think another really beautiful way that you can schedule quality time with your partner is to do regular check-ins. When I say check-in, what I mean is scheduling time to connect and say, how are you feeling about the relationship lately? Are there things that we can work on? What are we enjoying so far? How are things going? You can almost think of it like a romance performance review, whether you're in dating or you're in a relationship, because you get to see how you're viewed in your partner's eyes, and you also get to share how they've been viewed in your eyes lately. Now, this is not an opportunity to nitpick and to argue and to turn it into a whole thing. We obviously don't want this to become a reason for you to yell and scream at your partner. We don't want yelling and screaming at all, but it is an opportunity to say, you know what, this has been on my mind for a little bit, and it is something that I want to open up about. Or, things have been going really well, and I really appreciate what you did there. I think a mix of both is always perfect, especially if you're going to be giving feedback on something you'd like to see change in the dynamic. Again, whether that's in dating or relationships. Maybe you're dating someone and you want to bring to their attention the frequency of your texting communication. It would also be helpful to cushion that comment about wanting more frequent texting with something that you feel they've been doing well in their relationship that makes you feel supported and heard, if it's there. These check-ins are great because you end up being a mirror for each other, reflecting back how you're experienced by them and how they're experienced by you. So certain ways to practice this quality time, as we've already touched on a little bit, are planning date nights, creating routines, say like weekly coffee chats or having an evening walk, showing interest in your partner's interests by either asking about them or participating in them, and also being intentional about listening, reflecting, and validating their feelings. Quality time is not spending time in the same room without interaction, and it's also not distracted or half-hearted engagement. So why do we spend quality time? Why does it matter? Well, it matters because it builds emotional security and trust. It demonstrates care through effort and presence, and it reinforces your bond by sharing experiences and making memories. And ultimately, none of the other love languages that we're about to dive into have a platform to exist without also there being quality time. So, as much as all the love languages weave into each other, it makes sense why quality time is the most preferred. And now let's move into the second most preferred love language in our country, physical touch. There's a quote by Diana Gabaldon, American author, that I thought was fitting for this one. She says, "Human touch is the spark of warmth that transforms moments into memories." Moments into memories. I love that because that speaks to mindfulness and the fact that connecting on a physical level makes moments memorable, and the memory needs to come from presence. If we're not present, then that touch, whatever it looks like, will go unremembered and maybe even unnoticed. So we want to get back to integrating physical touch in a meaningful and intentional way, whether you're dating or in a relationship. Now, generally speaking, physical touch can be divided into non-sexual touching and sexual touching, but we can go even deeper. Let's talk about affectionate touching. Now, affectionate touching is not necessarily leading to sex, but it can be kisses, cuddling, hand holding. And these are things that indicate that your relationship goes deeper than friendship, that there's something more there, there's romance. Another type of touch is supportive touch. So this might be cradling someone when they're struggling and holding their hand when they're feeling scared, putting their arm around them, making them feel protected and knowing that they will be held. Going back to that quote at the start of the episode, held and free, this is the held part in a physical sense. Another type of touch is playful touch. This could look like tickling, poking, nudging, play wrestling, light shoulder or arm punches, goofy hand gestures, teasing, dancing, touching in a way that provides humor and lightness and goofiness to the relationship. Because playfulness is so important, even on an individual level, to get back to that inner child and to know that they are free to be themselves. Now, when you can access that inner child freedom and playfulness with yourself, that's beautiful. When you can access it with a partner, you definitely have reached peak authenticity because you can just be your weird, fun, silly self with them and they can reciprocate that back to you. And then we have intimate touching, which would be categorized as sexual touching. So these could be acts leading up to sex, like foreplay, or sex itself. No matter what type of physical touch we're talking about, from an evolutionary perspective, we need it. There's research that supports that if we don't have physical touch from a young age, we risk more immunocompromisation and even death. This has been shown in both human infants and animals. One of the most noteworthy studies in psychology on the importance of physical touch, and also one of my favorites, is Harlow's monkeys. In this experiment, they demonstrated how baby monkeys will prefer flocking to a fuzzy surrogate mother over getting food. This study was done in the 50s and 60s, and in sum, the setup was that these infant monkeys were separated from their mothers and given two surrogate mothers. There was a wire mother, and she was made of metal and provided food to the monkeys through a bottle, and then there was a cloth mother, which was a surrogate covered in soft fabric but didn't have any food. The findings of the study were that the monkeys spent most of their time clinging to the cloth mother, seeking comfort and physical security, even though the wire mother provided nourishment. When frightened, they constantly sought the cloth mother for reassurance. And so we can see just how critical comfort, warmth, and physical touch is as a basic need. Some of the evolutionary functions of physical touch include emotional bonding, stress reduction, a form of communication beyond language, affirmation and validation, and also creating a sense of safety. It's important to respect other people's personal space and boundaries, and consent is obviously important for any form of touch, whether it's affectionate or otherwise. But coming back to basics and understanding that everyone requires some touch. But let's narrow our focus to intimate touch for a moment. I'd like to debunk the myth that we have a sex drive. Now, this is credit to author Emily Nagoski in her book, Come As You Are, pun intended, where she argues that sexual desire is not in fact a drive. It's not something that is essential for survival. Physical touch in general, yes. Umbrella term, yes. But sex itself, she argues, is not essential for survival. And that framing it as a drive actually implies that it must be satisfied, something that is lacking which needs to be fulfilled, and this can actually lead to misconceptions and urgency and even entitlement in sexual relationships about when, how, where, how often sex is occurring. So she proposes that sexual desire works like a mechanism, and the mechanism she analogizes this to is a car. In a car, we have the accelerator and we have the brakes. And with the accelerator, this is how easily we get turned on, factors that increase sexual arousal. And then we have the brakes, factors that decrease sexual arousal. And I love this model because it considers the complexity and the context dependent impacts of sexual desire. It's not just about whether or not you have a high sex drive in quotations. It's considering the turn-ons as well as the turn-offs, all of which are influenced by our psychology. And so as I expand on the different combinations of accelerators and brakes, I encourage you to reflect on where you lie in this mechanism analogy and maybe where your partner lies. So let's consider someone who has very sensitive gas pedal. They get turned on really easily, but then they maybe have a less sensitive brake, so they don't get turned off very easily. This would be someone who is traditionally considered as having a quote-unquote high sex drive, so all gas, no brakes. And then we might have someone who has a very sensitive accelerator, so turned on very easily, but then also really sensitive brakes, so they're turned off very easily. And then we might have someone who has a very low sensitivity accelerator, so they have a hard time getting turned on, but maybe they also have low sensitivity brakes. So as much as they have a hard time getting turned on, they also don't get turned off very easily. And finally, we'd have someone who has a low sensitivity gas pedal, so not turned on very easily, and also high sensitivity brakes, which means they're turned off very easily. Traditionally, this would be viewed as someone who has a low sex drive. But let's continue to do away with the term sex drive because looking at sex as a mechanism is way more interesting. We can see how amongst these four combinations, there's going to be different levels, different degrees of sensitivity. It's not just on and off buttons for people. It's about a gradient. It's how intense in that day, in that moment, is the sensitivity of your gas pedal and the sensitivity of your brakes. So it's interesting to explore these types of conversations with your partner, and I'd absolutely encourage you to do so, whether you're in a relationship or in the dating phase, having the courage and confidence to be open about what turns you on and what turns you off. These types of conversations would absolutely be categorized under the quality time section, making time and space to really explore one another on a deeper level. To open up our words of affirmation segment, I'd like to start with a quote from Mother Teresa. She said, "Kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless." I love this because it highlights the ease in which we can deliver compliments and yet the resonance and the power and the weight they can hold for the recipient. And I'd also like to consider how sometimes it's really difficult for people to speak these words of affirmations. They're not always short and easy to speak. They can be really challenging because for someone who doesn't tend towards being vulnerable and open and expressive with their words, this could feel really out of their comfort zone. And revisiting my paint palette analogy, let's consider how adding any new color to your palette means stepping outside of your comfort zone. So challenging yourself or your partner to add that new color and start playing around with it and understanding that it might be messy at first, but showing that effort is a huge step in the right direction. If it feels like there's mental blockages to taking steps towards any of these love languages that I'm talking about today, then I highly encourage some introspection in a safe and therapeutic environment, whether that's in therapy itself or with a partner, ideally with someone who feels like they are a safe space to explore the depths of why there's these blockages to being vulnerable and being open. Because it's not that you or your partner doesn't feel these things, doesn't think these lovely things about you, doesn't have all of these internal affirmations ready for you. They just might not know how to express them. And this reminds me of another message I saw on social media recently by an anonymous poster. It said, "Don't admire quietly." It really stuck with me. Don't admire quietly, because it's not always implied that that person loves you. It's not always implied that that person thinks you're beautiful. And so taking the time to say those things can really, really resonate with your partner and or with yourself. And asking that that person takes the time to do that for you can be such a simple but very, very impactful change in the dynamic. Now, we see again and again how words of affirmation is something that needs to be reignited in relationships that are more long term. But in the early phases of dating, it's very important to consider the weight on the words of affirmation. What I mean by this is you can hear all of the lovely, beautiful, wonderful compliments from your dating partner, and you don't know the intention behind them until you've got to know them more. On a more basic level, a lot of us understand how comments about only physicality might indicate that that person is only interested in short-term partnership. So someone that's only giving you compliments about your body, for example, they might only be interested in having sex with you. Whereas someone who's giving compliments about invisible traits, invisible in quotation, traits that are reflecting your personality and your character, or maybe your intelligence, those are traits that a partner who's looking for a long-term commitment would be focusing more on. So we do want to consider the different weights that each of these types of compliments are being given by that dating partner. But regardless of whether the compliments are signaling long-term or short-term intent, there does need to be curiosity applied to the person that's delivering these towards you. Figuring out, back to the start, quality time, meaningful conversations, what is their intention in dating and what ultimately are they looking for out of this dynamic between the two of you. This can help to discern whether or not the person is someone you want to continue seeing. I'm going to take a second here to explain a term called love bombing. Love bombing means to be bombarded with compliments of any sort, and the person delivering the compliments is not doing it for your benefit. They're actually doing it for their own benefit. So let me break down what this means. Consider the quote unquote love bomber. This person maybe has only learned how to receive love by showing up for other people rather than showing up for themselves. They know that it feels good to feel valued by someone for how much they can give to that person. So say you're being flooded with compliments by this person, and then all of a sudden you feel infatuated by them. Why? Because they've made you feel so good. They've made you feel like they're infatuated with you. And then they feel good because you're infatuated with them. So it feels like a win-win. But their intention of the compliments being self-serving could be revealed if the relationship doesn't end up developing into something that's healthy. So this person might not end up pursuing you, even though they were demonstrating that they were interested long term. The signals might not be reliable in that case. So it's something to look out for. The way you can discern something like that is to continue having those meaningful conversations, to continue spending quality time until you've got a better sense of whether or not they're being genuine. It's also important to consider how words of affirmation don't always have to be compliments. So they can be verbalizing love, they can be offering encouragement, they can be expressing gratitude. So maybe an affirmation is, I love you, I feel so lucky to have you in my life. Another one might be, I believe in you, you've got this, or I appreciate all that you do for me, in addition to, you look amazing today. And being able to dial in to these different facets of words of affirmation depending on the context is so key in signaling to your partner that you understand what they need from you then, and not in a way that they need you, in a way that you can add to their life and help boost them up in that moment. Let's move into acts of service at 13% preference, a close fourth to words of affirmation, which was rated 14% preferred. Acts of service. Going beyond the limiting confines of language, as important as language is, to show love and care through helpful actions and thoughtful gestures that ease someone's burden or enhance their well-being. This allows your partner to see through action, not words, that you will show up for them no matter what, and that you've got them. This is the held part of held and free, but in a non-physical sense, more of a metaphorical I've got your back sense. In a committed relationship, acts of service might look like prepping meals for your partner, making them a coffee, doing household chores, helping them with a project, making sure that the snow's brushed off their car in the morning, doing little things and big things to show that you want to help ease their day, ease their life. Now, it's important to consider that the motive behind these actions is to see your partner happy. And that in a healthy partnership, these things will be given right back to you, because when you dish them out, your partner's going to want to dish them back to you because it feels good. That reciprocity shows that both of you have each other's backs. The saying is often true that actions usually speak louder than words, but when you have words before the action, say someone promising that they'll make you dinner and then they go ahead and make you dinner, all of a sudden those words that preceded the action have been reinforced and have way more meaning. So the whole talk is cheap. Well, talk isn't cheap if you've demonstrated that your talk means that there will be action. This seems to be one of the number one things people look for in dating is, do their actions match their words? Have they said things that they're following through on? Can I trust this person? This is ultimately what it comes down to. The action shows that they are trustworthy. And if there is trust being built, then there's less anxiety. And if there's less anxiety, there's more room for stable connection. And if that connection manifests into a relationship, then in a relationship where there's acts of service from both parties, there's reduced stress, there's better teamwork, and there's just a sense of thoughtfulness that overarches the relationship itself. And you get to learn more about yourself through how you show up for your partner. As said by Gandhi, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And last but not least, we have receiving gifts as our fifth and final preferred love language at 5%. Gift giving gets a bad reputation, especially when it's high up on someone's love language preference. As we saw earlier in the study referenced in this episode, it tended towards younger people as a preference. So does this mean that they want the next shiny thing? It could be, but it also could be that anyone who wants gifts is looking for signals that their partner knows and understands them like no one else. No matter the price tag, the intention behind the gift is really what matters when it comes to gift giving. Does the gift have meaning? Does the gift reflect inside jokes in your relationship? Does it reflect that you understand what really matters to your partner, that you've heard them, that you know what's important and you know what they would appreciate in a gift? Gift giving can't be, buy me that shiny car or you don't love me. It has to be more than that. It can be thoughtful. It can be small. It can be, I was at the grocery store and I remembered we had these gummies the first time we watched a movie together, and so I picked them up for us to have tonight. That probably cost less than $4, and it shows that you were present for clearly a very quality time moment early on in your dating, and now you want to show that and reminisce on that and be sentimental. Gifts that have sentimentality behind them, those are the winners. They could be handmade, maybe they are flashy, but so long as they have sentiment behind them and it's not just about showing off or buying something out of fear to appease your partner, you worry that if you don't do something for them, get them the next shiny thing, they might be upset with you. There's so many different scenarios in which gift giving can become very problematic and even a point of contention in relationships. But we want to do away with all of that and come back to basics and focus on how the gift itself is a symbol, a physical symbol of your love for that person. And the beautiful thing about giving from a place of love is that you will never be spiritually, financially, emotionally depleted, because you'll find that you always have more to give. When you're giving love, no matter the price tag, you don't have to worry about running out, because there's always more to give. You'll never run out of it. So long as you're in a healthy relationship, you're feeling safe and supported, you're getting those demonstrations of love back towards you, then there isn't any way that you could possibly run out. There's a saying about sharing your love with others, and it says that you have to keep what you have by giving it away. Keep what you have by giving it away. It sounds counterintuitive, but when we're talking about the pricelessness of love, you'll find that it's boundless and limitless. Because as cheesy as it sounds, love is priceless and it's also intangible. The symbols that you put into the gifts, that's the tangible form of love. And that's when it can be so fun. So if gift giving has traditionally felt stressful, then I encourage you to look at how sentimental are you being with the gift giving? How can we make it more playful? How can it be less stressful, less about the commodity, and more about the person who you're giving it to and who you are? Gift giving in the dating phase is especially interesting because this type of demonstration of love can show interest and intent, but it can also be the person kind of puffing up their chest and puffing up their feathers and saying, look at me, I'm the ideal partner, I can provide. And then it becomes less about the recipient of the gift and more about the person that's giving it. For example, I had a friend recently share that she was taken on a first date to a Raptors game and that she was also gifted chocolates and little stuffed animals. And she felt like this was too much because she'd never met this person before. Whereas if that same date with those same gifts were presented later on in the relationship, she might have found that more meaningful and cute and endearing, but because he kind of jumped the gun on that, then the gifts immediately lost their meaning. So it's important to watch for these signals and to also be selective on what you're giving to these people that you're dating and to the people that you're in relationships with. To recognize that gifts are a great opportunity to deepen your connection, but they can also be a hindrance if they're delivered in the wrong way or if the context just isn't appropriate yet. So I'd encourage you to keep all these things in mind as opportunities arise for you to give gifts to your partner or to someone you're dating, by reminding yourself that giving a gift is to say, I see you, I know you, and I care about you. Maybe even, I love you. As we come to a close on our love language discussion, I'd like to draw attention to the glue of all of these love languages, which isn't mentioned, but I think is explicitly important. And that is authenticity. Authenticity is the glue that holds all of these acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touches, quality time, and gifts together. Because if all of those things are being demonstrated from a place of performance versus genuine connection, then they don't really mean anything. And so we have to ask ourselves, we have to have the courage to look at ourselves and say, have I been acting from a place of authenticity or am I being performative? It's really important to look at how I can show up and be 100% myself for my partner, because that gives them the opportunity to choose whether or not they'd like to love me. If I'm pretending to be someone else and they've fallen in love with that someone else, well, this might get pretty sticky if all of a sudden I start to be myself over time. This isn't what they signed up for, right? But if you're 100% yourself off the bat, then you're showing them what they'd be signing up for. As said by American writer Harville Hendrix, you don't need someone to complete you. You only need someone to accept you completely. To know that they've got you in every sense of the word, and that they not only invite you to be 100% yourself, they prefer you to be 100% yourself. That's the version of you that they love most, and the version of you that they want to continue to get to know on this never-ending evolution that is your relationship. The right people will love you more for it, and the people that aren't meant for you will self-eliminate. They'll take a step back and they'll make room for people that want to be with your authentic self. Vulnerability and authenticity can be intimidating, and it sometimes takes a lot of healing to show up authentically and to learn how to do so in a partnership. But I promise, the person who is ready to be authentic for you also wants to meet the real you. So give them that opportunity. And more importantly, give yourself that opportunity to be loved as 100% you. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, I invite you to participate in a Growth Zone challenge. I invite you to take a moment, a second, a gap in your day right now and share this episode with 2 other people. Thank you for minding the gaps with me. I'll see you next time on the journey out of our comfort zones and into our growth zones.